our regular weekly trainings. This week, we're covering the listing agreement. It's coupled in with for the first quarter 2026, we're coupling our trainings with the 100 Days of Greatness training going on inside of our office. That being said, what we cover during these trainings is applicable to all agents, no matter where you're at in your business, beginning to advanced. Today, one of the topics that is covered under the 100 Days of Greatness is getting listing appointments and securing those listings. So we are covering the listing agreement. If you have any questions on this form, you're watching this in replay, feel free to throw it in the comments section. You can reach out to me directly, or if you're part of our office, we do a car forms open Q&A every first Friday of the month. So you can always join in on that to get any questions regarding any car forms answered that you might have. Our listing agreement starts with that agency disclosure, as does our buyer representation agreement and our offer. Make sure that this gets signed. Super important. It's one of those legal things that needs to happen anytime it's presented. We have our listing agreement. Okay, make sure that you put a date prepared in the upper left-hand corner. Remember, that's that date that's going to be referenced on any modifications or cancellations or anything like that. And then you want to make sure that you have sellers' names, broker here. Okay, this isn't you. This is going to be your brokerage. So you're going to put the name of the brokerage there. And then make sure you do the full and complete address, including the suffix. So here in my example, I have 123 Sample Street. There could be 123 Sample Court, 123 Sample Drive, and 123 Sample Street, all in the same city. So make sure to include that suffix. And then put your city, county, zip code, and your parcel number. Now, if you are using the new and improved Zip Forms Transact, it will actually pull over. You can search tax records for all of this information. It'll pull it in for you, which is fabulous. As we move into the grid section, I'm going to get to one. I'm kind of going to gloss over just a couple things here, some things that you probably want to pay attention to inside the grid. And then I'm going to jump to one specific thing that I've actually been digging a little bit into to draw your attention to it. But listing period here can't exceed 24 months for regular residential properties owned by regular residential people. But just so you know, I like to put a expiration date that is consistent. So maybe all of my listings expire on like June 30th and December 31st, right? And the reason that I do that is it makes it really easy to know when my listings are getting ready to expire, rather than if I'm like, oh, I'll go 6 months, so that puts me on September 3rd. Now I've got to remember that in the case that it hasn't sold yet on a slower market. So I like to just make them all consistent and just throw them on like 2 dates a year so that I know what needs to take place. You do want to make sure you fill this out completely. We talked about this with the BRBC. If there's things that are left uncompleted that don't have a default, it actually makes the agreement invalid. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. So we want to make sure that if there's anything specific, if it's a manufactured home, probate, conservatorship, guardianship, that we click these boxes here. You fill in your listing price. Don't put to be determined there. You actually need to fill something out. Now, if we're taking this listing agreement to go meet with our sellers at a listing appointment, you can leave it blank for that purpose, right? Fill out everything else that you want filled out, and then go back in when they get ready to sign this when we're meeting in person, fill out that list price, and then have them initial it. So, right, so if we have some things printed on the form and some things handwritten on the form, we just want our sellers to initial all the handwritten portions. If you just print a blank form to take with you and you fill it all out by hand, they don't have to initial those handwritten things because it's consistent throughout the entire form. But anything that's handwritten versus printed, if it's got both on there, you want it to be initialed. You're going to put your compensation in here. Additional compensation, okay, if buyer is unrepresented. What does that mean? That means that if when we negotiate our listing agreement, we say, hey, seller, I'm going to sell this property for you. You're going to pay me X%. Okay, we're assuming buyer is getting compensated by they're being represented by their own broker. They're going to hire you to represent them in a dual agency situation. I don't recommend representing both the buyer and the seller. Refer it out. You're going to get in trouble with that one. It's legal. I just don't recommend it. If there's any gray area, that's where it comes into play. And I just think there's going to be more lawsuits from dual agency than single agency as far as the same agent representing both buyer and seller, not the same brokerage, which is also dual agency. But this additional compensation is, let's say the buyer comes to make an offer on your property, your listing, and they don't have an agent and they don't want to hire you to represent them. They do not have an agent. That's where C2 comes into play. Okay, so you might be like, hey, we're going to charge X% in addition. If this buyer that makes an offer is unrepresented, seller, you're going to pay that to me because ultimately I'm going to do more work on behalf of that buyer who does not have their own agent, right? I've got to open the property for them. I probably have to supply forms for them, right? So because we're going to do more work, we're going to get paid a little bit more to get that property sold. This only applies, again, if the buyer is unrepresented. I highly recommend checking this box and filling something in here. Okay, it doesn't apply to dual agency. Okay, continuation right down here, C3. This is, hey, how many days after the listing period or the extension, right? The it's over or we've extended it. Would I get compensated for the sale of this property if you enter into contract on it? This is important because this says that, hey, if we've got potential buyers looking at this property, you decide to cancel the listing agreement, somebody turns around to make the purchase of this property, we can't cancel so that we can go around the agent. So I usually make this somewhere between 60 or 90 days. Some people go up to 120 days, like 2 to 3 months if they want to, somebody who saw the property wants to make an offer on the property after the listing period is over, then I would still be due compensation. Now keep in mind we have to provide the identified prospective buyers. Okay. Seller obligation to pay previous brokers. If they had a previous agreement with somebody else, that would be listed here. And if you are paying a referral fee related to the representation of the seller, right? Somebody said, hey, Amy, I have a seller that wants to sell in Vacaville. Will you represent them and pay me a referral fee, right? Because maybe they're out of area agent or whatever the situation is. Then that would be a referral fee. We would check this box here and we would fill out that CAR form RAD, R-A-D. We talked about that one in the new forms training back in December. Here on D1 is items included and items excluded. Okay. Why is this important? Because, right, we need to know the definition of fixtures versus not fixtures, right? What moves with the property and what doesn't go with the property. I like to make sure that we have a conversation with my seller on these items, and big things would get listed here, but little things like, right, if there's decorative shelves, because that could go either way. There's something that maybe the seller wants to take the chandelier because it's a family chandelier. I usually do an addendum for that list of items that I then upload with my HomeLight listing management file as part of my seller disclosures. That way, because listing it here in the listing agreement doesn't mean that it actually transpires over to our purchase agreement when we actually get an offer on the property, right? These are just the seller's wishes, but if they aren't actually included or excluded as part of the purchase agreement, then it doesn't matter what was written here, except that the seller is going to be really mad at you if you sold their family chandelier with the property. So just kind of keep that in mind. That's why this isn't a very big section. But again, I usually go over that later on after the listing agreement signed with my sellers. I have them look around. I walk through the definition of what's going to convey with the property automatically and ask if there's anything they don't want to convey or things that they would like to stay with the property. Maybe they don't want to move the appliances, right? So we have that conversation and I do an addendum for those items. Here's leased items. Do they have anything that's leased that's not owned by them that would stay with the property? And do they have anything liened? The difference is something that's leased, right? Like a water softener is, I don't own the water softener. The other company owns the water softener. I pay them a monthly service fee to keep it in good working order, to keep it functioning. but ultimately they still own it. If I cancel the contract, they're going to come take the water softener away. Okay, that's leased. Liened is, hey, I purchased a new HVAC system and they put a lien on the title of my home, meaning that I can't sell the property without the buyer either taking over that contract or me paying it off because we have to remove the lien from the property. So that's the difference between leased and liened. Liened is I own it. I might be making payments on it though. Okay. Smart home features seller prefers to include or those that the seller prefers to exclude. Property will be marketed with the following MLS. Here's the primary and here's others. Now, I personally, Barry's, right, our main MLS for Solano County has lots of other MLSs that it partners with, like MetroList and San Francisco and Contra Costa. I'm going to put the primary here where the property is going to be listed and then put all the others here because now when I talk about this listing agreement with my potential sellers, I'm like, hey, your property is not just getting exposure in these counties. We're actually pushing it out to the actual MLSs for all these other counties, which means any of the agents that have their buyers set up on an automatic search is going to get made aware of your property if it matches their criteria anywhere in the Greater Bay and Sacramento areas. Okay, that's huge. Okay, other agents might not be talking about that, so it's going to help outline your value. Okay, even though it also gets pushed out right to all the major websites as well. Publication of seller willingness to consider concessions. If checked below, seller authorizes broker to market that seller is willing to consider offers asking for concessions. No amount of possible concession will be stated in such marketing unless the seller notifies broker in writing of the amount in the MLS and any other marketing outside the MLS. So you probably want to check those boxes, have that conversation with your sellers. Notice here we didn't say compensation, we didn't say commissions, we didn't say buyer's broker, right? It's just concessions. It's all considered concessions. Okay, that would be closing costs, anything. So that opens the door to any of those items. Seller instructs broker to not take or use photographs in marketing except as required by MLS rules. MLS rules is one photo of the front of the property, just so you know. So just that's what you're opening the door for there. Obviously, more photos is going to get you more exposure. Timing and presentation of offers. Personally, I like to wait a week to present offers. So I would probably check this box here and be like, hey, 7 days after the property is listed as active in the MLS, only because that gives time for everybody to see it. And then I feel like it gives the opportunity for potentially more offers to come in or better offers. We're not limited to those that can get there within 2 hours of the property hitting the market. Buyer supplemental offer letters. These are those buyer love letters. The default now is that the seller instructs broker to not present these letters. If we check the box, then we're submitting those letters, right? That makes it more emotional instead of a business decision. And it also could leave the seller open to a potential discrimination lawsuit by reading those letters before making a decision on the offer. Are you going to have any reports or inspections done as F3 prior to the property going on the market? Okay. Exceptions to ownership or title goes in G. Seller intends to include a contingency for the purchase of replacement property as part of any transaction. We would check this box here in H. That leaves it open that it's a seller's purchase of replacement property. So, hey, we want to sell this property, but we're only going to sell it if we can enter into contract and close on a replacement property because we don't want to be homeless. Okay, so that's what that contingency outlines. Seller opts out of the key safe or lockbox or signs. Okay, and then additional terms down here in K. Now, we have our advisories here. So if it's a bank-owned property, if it's in a trust, other short sale listing, right? And then the contract goes through all the items. So in case you haven't seen this grid before, like here on G, it references in the next column is 21. That means if we go down to section 21, that's where it goes into more detail on what that section means. So that's kind of the rest of this contract is it just goes into more detail on all the things that are in this grid. Okay, all the legalese, if you will. So we're not going to cover all of that except for they've separated out part of this form now into an MLS addendum. So that's kind of the basics behind this listing agreement. Let me cover one more section here. The entity sellers, just so you know, if your seller is not an individual owner of a property, right? Like an actual name, if it's held in a trust or an LLC or a corporation, we need to check this box here and fill out this section. Otherwise, we just skip the entity seller section. Okay. So I'm going to continue on because this MLS service addendum is really important. All this stuff used to be in our residential listing agreement, and then a couple of years ago, they separated it out, which ultimately I think is good, but it is super important because this talks about, hey, what is an MLS? Realtor-owned MLSs, right? We don't have to necessarily adhere to the rules of the National Association of Realtors versus one that's organization owned. What information is provided to the MLS after sale? What is a broker? What is the broker's MLS? Benefits of using an MLS, impact of opting out of the MLS, right? It talks about that here. Public and private marketing of property, the clear cooperation policy. This is something that I wanted to touch on. I will probably retouch on this on Friday during our car forms training as well. In our MLS system, Barry's is an agent-owned MLS, okay? Which means that we don't have to adhere, or Barry's doesn't adhere to the clear cooperation policy. Now, I struggle with this a little bit. This means that the clear cooperation policy is a National Association of Realtors policy. It just states that within 24 hours of any public marketing of a property, it needs to be in the MLS as active and available to be seen. Now, Barry's has the coming soon status, which they say satisfies the NAR clear cooperation policy because it's in the MLS. Okay, now keep in mind that if we're going to list a property that's in the Metro list or any other MLS, but Metro list is really strict about it, service area. So if our property is in Winters, Dix, or Davis, up into the Sacramento area, if its primary service area is not in one of the Barry's counties, it's in one of the Sacramento Metro list counties, they adhere to the clear cooperation policy. And if they see any marketing of your property more than 24 hours before that property is in the MLS as active and ready to be shown, you will get in trouble. Okay? They're very strict about that. Barry's you can market as coming soon. You can post it on the internet, on social media. You can put a coming soon sign in the yard. You can send out mailers. Metro List, all of that is public marketing. You cannot do that until it's in the MLS or 24 hours before the MLS. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, that being said, NAR came out last year and revised their information just a little bit in their policy. Okay, so if it's going to be in the main Barry's service area, which is Solano, Napa, Sonoma, Marin, Solano, Mendocino counties. Okay, we can click this box here that the clear cooperation policy does not apply. Okay, if it's in any other county, we need to, the clear cooperation policy does apply. So our marketing options, we're going to jump down here to section 5. Our marketing options are full exposure. Okay, so anywhere else, once we start marketing it to the public, it needs to be in the MLS for full exposure. We can, so coming soon is or equivalent marketing, right? It can be in the MLS as a coming soon in an MLS that allows that. That covers the NAR policy, and then you can start marketing it to the public because it's technically in the MLS. Okay, but that's in the in any other county, it needs to be on the MLS. Okay. And technically, like even though with Barry's, They don't adhere to the clear cooperation policy. If you're part of the National Association of Realtors, which most of us are, we still kind of have an obligation, even though our MLS doesn't adhere to it, we still kind of have this obligation to adhere to it because that's what we've agreed to as being part of the National Association of Realtors. So you see, it gets to this really like gray area here of what's okay versus not what's not okay for us to do. And are we operating how we should if we are in the Barry service area putting coming soons in the yard, posting things as coming soon, but it's not actually in the MLS? No, we aren't. We are probably going to get in trouble for that at some point. Or or we need to readjust and think about our membership to National Association of Realtors. So it should be, if you're going to be marketing it as coming soon, right? If it's going out, here's the trick on this. If it's going out on the IDX websites, right? If you want it syndicated out, that would be the coming soon choice. Okay, if we're not ready to go on the market today, but we want it out there getting exposure, we aren't quite ready for it to be shown, then we want it as coming soon. Okay, in Barry's. MetroList, you can't do this. The other options, there's two other options. One is an office exclusive listing. Okay, that means that, hey, it's not going on the MLS right now. We're not ready to market it, but I've got a signed listing agreement. We can share that with any of the agents within our office, okay, before it comes on the market. And they can share, and our clients. So we can share it with our database. We can share it with the other agents in our office, and they can share it with their database. Okay, but technically we shouldn't be sharing it anywhere else if it's no public marketing prior to on market. Okay. The other option, so we have full exposure, we have office exclusive. We talked about how to work around the full exposure with the coming soon status. And then we have a delayed marketing or limited exposure. Okay, this was the new thing that NAR came out with back in 2025, so like about a year ago. Um, you would submit it to the MLS as a not on market property yet. Okay. What this does is the MLS, and you have to check with your MLS to see if they have the ability to do this, is they have record of all of the properties that have a signed listing agreement that aren't going to be marketed in the MLS at all or right away. Okay. Um, so that means that they can look up this information so that they could engage in one-on-one promotion with existing or past clients. Okay. They can't mass market the property to current or past clients. The information may not be, so the property can't be syndicated out to other third-party websites that have agreements with the MLS. Places like Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, right? All those places that we put our listing in the MLS and it goes out to all these other websites. Okay, we can't put it on any of those websites to still be in connection with the NAR policy. Okay, you can't use your own IDX website to electronically display MLS data about the property. Okay, other members can electronically display MLS data about the property on their own websites, but such information is only available to be seen by other members, clients, or those that have registered with the other member, but not members of the general public. Okay, so this is kind of the workaround. We're not ready to put it in the MLS yet. We're not ready to mass market it to everybody. It's not ready to be shown. But I still want to be able to tell people about it. That would be delayed marketing, limited exposure. The NAR has okayed this. So again, even though Barry says, hey, we don't adhere to the clear cooperation policy, you're a member of the National Association of Realtors. So ultimately, you're supposed to adhere to this. So this is kind of that workaround. Like we can't put it on IDX websites. We can't mass market the property out there, but we could put, a sign in the yard. We could mention it to our clients, right? So it's just that mass marketing. Now, what's considered mass marketing? I don't really know. So anyways, but I'm just going to throw that out there because I've been struggling with the clear cooperation policy. Um, and Barry's stance on it, which I love, by the way. In fact, the other MLS that I belong to in Idaho also has swapped over to agent owned, so they don't adhere to the coming soon, but it's raised this question and problem of, well, how do we handle that as realtors? And this is is the option to that. So NAR does consider a coming soon listing, so something that's listed as coming soon in the MLS as something that adheres to that policy. And then there's this delayed marketing limit exposure, which means we can't mass market it out on all the IDX websites and everything, but we can market the property on our own. So just some things there to be aware of. So that's on the MLS addendum. You do have to say, hey, is it a total internet opt-out? Like, are we not listing the property or is it limited here? And are we doing, this is where we would check the box for full exposure. Okay. The marketing options selected below shall start at the beginning of the listing period or a specific date. So if we're not going to start marketing it for 2 months to anybody except just like inside of our office, we would put the date here that we're going to start. And keep in mind, we can always change this date. So here's where you get your default of full exposure. You can go delayed marketing, limited exposure. Okay, again, that's if applicable, allowed by the MLS. They were all supposed to enact this starting last September. So they should all be able to do this. Coming soon, that's only if allowed by the MLS. Okay. And that's like really just Barry's allows for that. Or office exclusive limited exposure. Okay. So those are your options there for exposure. I just felt like that was necessary. Or here we go. We got full exposure here, begin marketing the property to the public under full exposure, including through the MLS on blank date. So we could say, hey, we want it as a delayed marketing, limited exposure, right? Starting on the beginning of the listing period. I feel like this should be an and. Oh, it would be just for office exclusive, right? So we can begin marketing it to our, so here's how this or two works down here at the bottom. It would be our marketing option is beginning of the listing period. We don't fill anything out on section 2 at the top. Okay. It's going to be an office exclusive limited exposure listing. We're not ready to market it to anybody yet, besides just maybe clients of the office and other agents of the office. Begin, the default here is do not market the property to the public during the entire listing period unless seller gives broker written instruction otherwise. So that would just be a modification of terms to the listing agreement to change that. So if we're not sure when it's going to go on the market, we would leave it listing period, office exclusive, and 1. And then when we're ready to go on the market or getting closer, we would sign a modification of terms to market the property to the public. Okay. If we already know what our date is, they're finishing up work, whatever, we could say, hey, we want to begin marketing the property to the public under full exposure in the MLS on this date. So this would be beginning of the listing period. We're not going to market it at all except to agents and agents in our office and our own clients inside of our office until this date. And then we would put a date here. Okay. Or, right? I just think this is so important to go over because you're going to look at this and be like, I don't know. Okay, so again, default listing period, full exposure. That means that it should be in the MLS within 24 hours of the signed listing agreement. Okay, if we delay the marketing or we're going to market it as coming soon, now it needs to be in the MLS as coming soon in an MLS that allows for that within 24 hours of signed listing agreement. Okay. So just be aware of that. Office exclusive, it doesn't have to go in the MLS, and then we just need to make a determination of when we will begin that full marketing to the public. The other option is delayed marketing. If allowed by the MLS, market the property as delayed marketing limited exposure. Seller understands that even though the property will be submitted to the MLS, the property data will not be syndicated on third-party websites, nor be exposed through other member IDX websites. The property will be available for others to see, tour, and inform their clients. Okay, it's just not going in the MLS and not going out on the web. Okay, that's basically, it's not going out on any of the IDX. Okay, we can change this at any time. Okay, so if we have office exclusive and we have an agent come through an open house and they're like, man, this isn't a match. And you're like, man, I've got the perfect property for them. It's just not on the market yet. If we have office exclusive limited exposure, we cannot tell that agent about our pocket listing that we have that's not ready to go on the market yet. Okay, that would be in violation of what the seller has instructed us to do. But if we say, hey, we want delayed marketing limited exposure, now we can tell that other agent about this listing that we have that's not ready for the market yet. Okay, super important. And again, this comes into we've kind of been in the Barry service area. We've been running wild with our coming soons, our pocket listings, being able to market them without them being in the MLS yet. But just know that that is a violation of NAR, even though it's not a violation of Barry's. And if we're a member of both, we have to balance that. Your delayed marketing is the option to balance that, either delayed marketing or coming soon. So just some things there as well in that MLS addendum. So that's that section 2. Okay. Fabulous. I think that's all I'm going to cover today. If we have more questions on this, you want me to go over it again, happy to do so. Just holler at me, throw your questions in the comments, or reach out to me directly. But I think that portion is super important. Fabulous. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week.